everybody. Good morning again, brothers. How's everybody doing? Great. All right, one more time. Good morning, brothers.
Good morning.
All right, let's do this. So glad to be here. Not only just glad to be here, there's no place I'd rather be surrounded by my people and especially preparing for the road ahead. Can we agree on that? Yes, and that's what we've been talking about this week, right? And so my name is Rahshib Thomas. I am CEO and founder of RT Consulting, and I'd love to tell people that I expand hearts and minds, and I do that through coaching, executive leadership development, and also diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting. The streets know me, or the community knows me, as spending over 2 decades in human resources and leadership roles in luxury rental residential companies and also hospitality companies. So always sales-driven, customer-facing, reaching your targets. Anybody knows about that, right? And so that's why this performance conversation is especially exciting for today, right? And so not only that, so that's who I am. Some of the people know me in the community also through the National Urban League, doing advocacy and policy work. And so as I look around the room and some people saying hello, that's how we know each other, always doing the work for our people and knowing not just our people, but all communities, right? So before we get into the panel, let me start by asking a few questions. How many people, by a show of hands, how many people have been evaluated by their supervisor or their superior? Raise your hands. Okay, yep, absolutely. Thank you, hands down. Let me ask you this. How many people in the room are responsible for evaluating someone else's performance? Raise your hand, absolutely, hands down. Let me check in on this. How many of you all have received performance appraisals or reviews that you necessarily didn't agree with? Right?
Wow.
That was a bunch of bull, right? Now, but how about this? Who's received a performance appraisal where you didn't believe it was capturing your development, nor was it setting you up for the next phase of your leadership? Absolutely. So we're in the right room, right? And so in true Black enterprise fashion, we've assembled a group of powerful Black men who represent billion-dollar corporations, not only to inform you, but to equip you, right? And so this morning's conversation, as we see it, is ACE, your performance review, proven tactics for success, promotion, and pay raises. So here's what we're gonna do. We see the gentleman in the room. Gentlemen on the panel, we're gonna go down the line. I'm gonna start with you, Wes, and just go tell them who you are, what do you do in the world, what do you get paid for, and how does the community know you?
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, I'm Wes Alexander. I work at Travelers. I'm the Vice President of Workforce Solutions. When I say Workforce Solutions, I guarantee, other than the Travelers people, that probably doesn't mean anything to anyone other than what I try to do is create safe spaces, right? So it's almost like an office of the ombudsman. It's this opportunity for people to come and give honest feedback about how they're feeling without having necessarily to go to HR. So I sit in HR, but I'm not really like HR. So I got this opportunity here for folks to come, express themselves. We do employee sentiment. It's really a culture gig because, you know, at my company, we believe that our culture is the thing that makes us different. And I know every company says that, but I really do think we try to live that, right? The community knows me in different ways. It depends on which community you talk about, right? I think that my home community, they know me as Coach Wes, right? I coach my boys. I'm like the Bill Belichick of the West Hartford Flag Football League. We playing for the championship on Sunday. That's why I'm leaving. My brothers, my golf community knows me as the worst golfer at Tumblebrook Golf Club, right? Yeah, my wife just knows me as the dude who's trying to hold it down, and I hope that, you know, the one thing that I try to bring to every situation is positivity, man, and good energy. So I'm hoping that I'm known as in this world as a dude who brings good energy.
All right, good energy.
Now let me check in. Yeah. Are there any Travelers people in the room?
Yeah, Travelers. Hey, real quick.
Wow.
Super proud of my organization. We brought 50 brothers, 50 brothers down here, right? Once again, that's a culture play. 2 years ago, we were 7.
Yeah. So they run deep. That's what they're saying, right? All right, thanks, Wes. Go ahead, take it away.
Hey, good morning, and thank you for having us here today. I'm Dexter Brown. I'm at DELL Technologies for the last 24 years. I lead a variety of different roles here at DELL. Today, I'm in a transformational role where we're trying to move from a call center mentality into a digital-first state. And we're on that journey, but it is a journey. And so we're going to talk about some of that as we talk about performance planning. I will also tell you from a community perspective, I am also a worth golfer, right? I've spent thousands on lessons and can't get that rotation right, but I'm still trying. But I do a lot in the community with what we call the African American Harvest Youth Foundation, where we have 30 different programs in one roof. And so as a community, we can come together, work with the community, and make sure that people get what they need. I think once we get to a place in life, we have a responsibility. Representation matters, and it matters in the community as well, because there's a little black boy that looks like each of us that will be aspiring to be someone one day, and we try to make sure that we are out front living up to all of those ideals.
Great. So I'm Michael Ford. I'm the Senior Vice President of Real Estate and Security at AT&T. So I'm responsible for all end-to-end real estate at AT&T. We have a huge portfolio, almost 200 million square feet of space. So I buy it, sell it, maintain it. I do all of security and investigations for the company, anything security, anything investigations, and I also have EH&S, Environment, Health, and Safety for the company. I tell everybody I work for everybody at AT&T because everybody's trying to tell me how to do my job. So everybody has a house, they have an apartment, this is the way you do it. Not really. So I hear it all the time. I probably get probably the second highest in emails in the company, second to HR. I get a lot of emails. But for us, a community known for giving. I belong to a lot of different charity organizations, and I give. HBCU graduate, went to Alabama A&M University. I always get back to university and other HBCUs.
Wow.
And I'm an avid sports fan. I am addicted to golf also. Just went to Scotland earlier this year. Got a chance to play the old course, and that was fantastic. I'm an okay golfer. I look like a golfer when I walked to that first tee, but I'm an okay golfer. Big football fan also. I live in Dallas, Texas. America's team. I root for America's team. And I'm also from Alabama, so the best college football team in the history of college football team, Roll Tide 18 championship.
All right. Shots fired already. So everybody give the panelists a round of applause. Let's give them their flowers. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So thank you. So as moderator, my job is I have a few questions that I'm going to throw out to the panelists, and everyone's going to have a chance to chime in. Then we're going to take some time to get some question and answers from the room because we know that the brilliance is in the room. Some of you all have been in this game for a long time and you know how it's played. And so we want to hear from you as well. And so my main job as moderator is to keep us on time. Mr. Edmonds said, keep us on time, Rahshib. So y'all ready to get started? All right, let's go. So I'm going to start with you, Wes. So tell the brothers in the room, what's the purpose of an annual performance review and why would an employer want to assess your performance?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the reasons I think are going to be obvious, right? If you're in a pay-for-performance culture, which most of us are. Matter of fact, real quick, if you're in a pay-for-performance culture, let me see your hands, right? So that's one way you got to get evaluated. We have to stack people up and use that evaluation to figure out how we're going to compensate people. But I would also say that I think that, from your perspective, the real purpose of the performance evaluation is for your own development, right? For you to figure out where you're strong, for you to figure out where your opportunities lie, for you to figure out where the gaps are, and if you're doing it correctly and working with your manager, to also figure out what's important to your manager, right? Like as you get into what you're being told when it relates to your performance, like the things that the manager is going to highlight or the opportunities that he or she is going to raise, that's like the answers to the test, right? It's like I tell my kids, like when you go to school, when the teacher writes something on the whiteboard and underlines it, that's important, right? So the same deal, when you're sitting in your performance evaluation and your manager is starting to get through, hey, this is what you did really well, but these are also the things you got to do differently. This is for your development to ultimately get better. So I think, those are main components, but We could go down the line, but I'm gonna stop talking.
And I want to add to that, and this is not a once-a-year thing. You're always being evaluated, so pay attention to that. And your manager is super important in your career, but I would say your manager's manager or your skip level is probably the most important person in your career. They need to know who you are. Your manager can recommend promotion, recommend a transfer, but typically your manager's manager is the one that approves it. If they don't know who you are, you really don't exist in the company. So make sure you're building those relationships all the way up as far as you can go in the organization. And that'll help you have a great review whenever it happens, whether it's semi-annual, annual, or if it's monthly.
And to build on that also, I would say it starts in the planning process, not at the end when we're talking about the review. When you start the planning process, you want to have an open dialogue about what the KPI, the key process indicators are, what you're going to be measured to, and what is the outcome. And you want to continue to come back to that, address it, and ensure that you meet the right expectation by the end. So when you get to the performance review, you're in a place where you're aligned, you're self-aware in some cases of the deficiency, and you can lean forward to talk about the development as you go. But don't wait until you get to the end, because you'll find that there are surprises.
Dexter, I'm glad you asked that question or you put that in the room, and I love how I see some of the heads nodding around the room. Some of us, it looks like we've been through this before, and we're like, oh, yeah, I remember that, right? But Dexter, staying on you, can you walk us through what typically happens in a typical performance review?
Yeah, they vary depending on, organizational size and where you are. When we come into a review cycle, oftentimes I like to know the employee long before I get there. So as they're working on projects, as they're delivering, I'm getting feedback both formally and informally from their constituents, from skip levels, as you just talked about, from my peers, from their peers, and ensuring that not only what we define as the what is being delivered, but how they're delivering it as well. And one thing that's important is as you go forward in delivering on those reviews, you want to make sure that you are assessing, are you on point? Are you off? And then what adjustments do you need to make to ensure that you get to the end and you have the desired result? Why is that important? Desired result is important because you talked about reward. There is a distribution on reward. And so you want to make sure you're meeting the expectation so when you get to the end, the reward matches the review.
And you want to make sure you're driving the conversation with your boss, because it can be a check-the-box exercise for your boss.
Right.
You need to make sure you're driving that
Yes,
conversation, and you make sure your goals, your commitments, your priorities are aligned to the company's priorities, not you just as an individual. You need to continue to develop, and you need to have those development pieces a part of your performance, but talk about the company. Know your company. Some people are deep in a company, and you don't even know what the revenue is at the end of the year. You should know that. You should know the whole profit. You should know the entire balance sheet and income statement. I don't care what job you do for a company. Be dialed in. Be in tune to what the company's doing and what the company's priorities are, and talk about that in your review.
Yeah, one thing too, for most, from a process standpoint, most of the time, you're gonna get an opportunity to do a self-assessment, right? You're gonna get an opportunity to do a self-assessment. Some of y'all gonna dog that. Don't do that. Take the time to go through what it is that you have accomplished, and not just list it in terms of accomplishments, but what was the impact of what it is that you did over that review period. I think some people want to take that part lightly because some people want to run from this process. But I think the reason that we're here and the reason why we're throwing this seminar is like, here's an opportunity for you to tell your story, to explain why you're valuable, to explain why you're indispensable. And if you dog that, then that's a lost opportunity. It doesn't come back, right? So my ask, again, from the process standpoint, even if you're not in a culture where they generally say, hey, send me your review of yourself, then I'll take your review and ultimately manage you. That's the way most of them work. But if you're not in that, write one anyway, right? Come in there fully prepared to explain what value you brought over that period.
And not only is that important, taking the time, you want it well written. This becomes your permanent record. When we start looking across the organization for employees to fill roles, we start looking at experiential set. We go back and review what you've done in the past. You, in the self-assessment, can shape that narrative, but please make sure it's well written, is in the accomplishments are there from a KPI perspective, and the impact also is there, so that when the next leader is reviewing, looking to fill a new role, then it stands out for them.
Well written, well written. Spend the time, for sure.
Some of the brothers, you talked about this, and Wes, I want to go back to what you said. What are some things people should be keeping track of? You said it collectively, but what are some things that are going to, some KPIs, key performance indicators that are going to come up in typical performance reviews that people should keep track of?
Yeah, I think it really boils down to what goals did you set with your manager at the beginning of the year, and then how can you show that you met those goals, or if you did not meet those goals, the why, right? I think that it really should be a holistic process, right? Like you should have a conversation about, here's what we're trying to get done in 2025. 3, 4 things, not 17 things, y'all. 3, 4 things, right, that you know you can lean into, get done. And then what you should be able to show is, all right, did I meet these markers, whether it's a earnings target or a production target or a number of people, SLAs, whatever the case may be given your job. What's important is that you look at what those goals are and then you play to those goals.
And one other thing I'll add, we're all a part of a team. Don't say I all the time. What did the team do? What did you guys accomplish together? When I worked at Microsoft before AT&T, I've only been at AT&T for just over a year. I was at Microsoft for 18 years. And if you don't have that we or what the team did, it's not a good review. We got bonused on what the team did, not what the individual. Now, you've got to play your part, but don't get caught up in I did this, I did that. No, nobody's going to do anything by themselves. The team did it.
Thank you for that. And you know, as a person who's been an HR director in roles, I don't know how many times people have come in during the performance appraisal process, usually at certain times of the year, and they're mad because they didn't get the rating they liked. And so in their self-assessment, sometimes they would say things like, I worked hard this year. So my question was, what's the number to that?
Right.
Right? And in telling that story and illustrating and controlling your narrative, you got to set it up to where your boss doesn't want to think too hard. If they're going to put in for a promotion for you or make that ask, that new line item, you need to set it up so all they have to do is deliver the package and say, look what he, she, or they did, right? But if you got to make them work hard, then they're doing too much work. You control that narrative, right? So Michael, I want to go to you. So when we think of annual performance appraisals or reviews, we know that that's a loaded term, right? It could be. So can you describe to us what types of reviews that attendees may experience throughout their career?
Sure. Well, I would say the first one, when you took that job at that company or you moved to that organization, the review started then. So that's the big one. Every single day you're being evaluated. We have the traditional.
Right now you're being evaluated.
That's right, that's right. You have the traditional reviews. Typically a company does it twice a year. You have a mid-year check-in, and then you have an annual review itself. You also have, depending on what your level is, they'll do a 360 review. So that's people that report into you, your peers, and people that you report to will do a 360. A lot of people get worked up about that, and they're afraid to put names down and add it to the tool. Get it done. That's just the baseline. You can always improve. You need to know how your team thinks about you. You need to understand how your peers think about you, and of course your boss and your boss's boss. But again, work the room, everybody. Ask for feedback. I always say to my team, feedback's a gift, and it should be Christmas every day around here. If I'm doing something wrong, let me know, because it's a problem if you don't let me know.
And to build on that, those are very formal gates. They're informal gates. You also want to make sure that you're getting feedback from your peers. Ask them. You come out of a presentation, pull your peer to a side and say, can you give me some feedback on this, right? You want real-time feedback so that you can make those adjustments and you're not waiting to formal times to actually get it from a leader or a manager. Actually, some of the best feedback I've gotten has come from a peer of mine or a friend. They were like, dude, that wasn't it, right? And so before they tell you, I'm telling you so you can go make those adjustments. I'll also say there are informal places, your one-on-ones. Some people walk, some people talk, some people meet at the water cooler. Those informal times are equally as important as the formal feedback because you'll get a sense of what the environment is thinking, what they're going to say to your boss or your boss's boss, and then you can shape that narrative then or make that correction.
Just to put a bow on this, it is incumbent upon you to know exactly what your brand is
Yes.
in your organization.
Correct.
That is your job. If you are walking around your organization and you don't know what your brand is, you are behind, right? So the only way to get that and get that in an honest and authentic way is to be dogged about it. Seek that information. Talk to your peers. Have people be honest with you. We are all subject to conversations in rooms we're not in.
Right.
That's the whole piece of this. We are all going to be subject to conversations of rooms you're not going to be in. And if you're not comfortable with what people are saying in the rooms, or if you don't know what people are saying in the rooms that you're not in, you need to figure that out.
Yeah, and you know sometimes when I didn't have a good presentation, I didn't do a good job. You need to acknowledge that and get better at it. You know, ask for help. Go take a class. Go to a seminar. Come here. You know we didn't do a good job and you can get better.
And be open to constructive feedback. Sometimes we can get defensive about it when people bring it to you. And oftentimes, if you listen to the intent, not even the words, that matters. Because for them to think enough of you to give you feedback, that in and of itself is positive, right? They want you to get better. They see the opportunity in you, and you want to make sure that you hear it, you digest it, and then you can make a determination on what you want to do with it.
Don't run from it.
You know, I want to, something Dexter said that I want to touch on that when I was a younger HR professional, I was very impressed by. I worked in a company that had an unwritten rule that if you did not have a degree, you did not get advanced. So a lot of times they had people that worked there a long time, but they didn't have a degree. So they didn't get the promotions. And this one person she was denied the promotion. They came back in with all of the emails from the senior executives that sat in the presentation and said, awesome presentation. That was phenomenal. And they showed up with all of that and said, I don't understand why I didn't get the promotion. Guess what? They got the promotion. They said, oh, we made a mistake. But it was evidence, and because you get all of those notes, and they were keeping track of their own, the commentary and how the brand was being managed out there. So y'all heard that, right? Always keeping notes, right? We use it on the flip side. We see on TikTok and those other things where people want to post what was in the Slack, right? When stuff is going down, but you can also do that. That can be used to support your endeavors for your career development. So let me ask the audience this. I'm going to open it up to the panelists in a second, but let me ask the audience to finish this statement for me. Let's see what room I'm in. Finish this statement. If you stay ready,
You have to get ready.
you ain't got to get ready. So let me ask you this, and the panelists have said this, but I want to drill this down because, again, we're walking out of here making sure that you're equipped, right? So how often should you prepare for your performance review, and whose responsibility is it?
Well, that's easy.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility. You should always be prepared. I mentor a lot of people. A lot of people ask me to mentor them, and this is sort of going beyond the performance review. The first thing I ask them is, can you send me your current resume with your current job on it? 99% of the people say I don't have an updated resume. That's the first problem, because that's your record. That's your work history, and you should keep your work history. You should probably update it twice a year, and you should have that ready to go. The next question is, do you have a bio? Do you have a short bio of your background, what you're all about? 3 paragraphs. First paragraph is all about what you do for the job, your current job. Second paragraph is about what you've done before, other companies or the company you're in. And then last paragraph is a little personal, where you went to school, your education, everything. They don't have that. So that's just a starter to keep up with your own history and know your pitch, your elevator pitch. That's your elevator pitch. You should be able to do it in 30 seconds, or you can have a 15-minute conversation about your background. When you run into the COO, the CEO, the CFO of the company, you have to be ready. People have been at companies for 10, 15 years, and their resume is that old. I'm not saying you're looking for a job, but you need to track your own history and have your story ready.
And oftentimes, what I find in a community like ours, we'll put our head down and we'll go to work. We'll work. We'll dig, and we will hope somebody recognize what we're doing. The message you have here is, while you're doing, make sure that you're documenting, but make sure you're celebrating and communicating with others what you're doing. So there's a thin line between bragging about what you're doing and telling people what you're doing, selling the narrative of what you're doing as you go through the process, right? And then back to the elevator pitch, you at least want one or two things that you can say if your exec walked in the room today, this is what I'm doing, how I'm doing, am I on or off track? And then this is what I'm going to do to get back on track.
And quickly, I just wanted to address that idea of, bragging and talking about what you're doing and being humble, right? Because I know sometimes there's a tension in terms, I don't want to have to blow my own horn or toot my own horn. And I think one way to kind of make sure, or at least for me, to alleviate that is to always work towards working a job that I like doing. If you are in a position that you enjoy doing, if you are working in roles and doing things that you enjoy, it becomes much more easy to talk about that, right? So it's not like you're bragging on yourself. It's just, hey, this is what I'm doing, and I'm having a great time doing it. So just to take a step back, I think there are some folks that are working a job and they're just working a job, right? And if that's you and you're doing what you got to do, I get it. But, OG told me once, man, find what you love and the bread will follow. Right? So if you're not working a job that you don't care about, you might need to think about whether or not you need to be working that job.
Some of us need to make a Snoop video. Remember Snoop got that star on the Walk of Fame? Anybody saw that? Hollywood Walk. I want to thank me. I got up early. I put in the work. So with your nose down or head down getting the work done, you do want to pause to celebrate the wins. And you're celebrating the wins in updating your resume. You're celebrating the wins and having that bio updated and knowing what your metrics are each and every time. That's how you also combat the imposter syndrome. Sometimes people think they're not supposed to be in a certain room. If you pause for a moment and look at what God done brought you through, the list's gonna keep on growing, right? And then you put the metric to that, right? And then that's when you show up in the self-evaluation. So final question to the panelists before I open it up to the room for question and answer. We've said this in so many ways, but we want to drill down this point. What makes that performance review valuable, and how can you use it to your advantage?
I would say simply your self-awareness, right? If you put the work in to know all of these things we're talking about, the metrics, the KPIs, the brand, who's saying what they think about you. When you get to the review process, it's easy. You're self-aware. You come in and you're like, look, this is what I've done well. Here's where I'm short. Here's where I'm going to develop. This is where I need your help. I love it when the employee comes in and says, look, I am well aware. This is what I need you to go do. And they put me to work, right? Hey, I didn't get this done because you didn't move this barrier. You didn't help me do this. And I have a responsibility in this relationship to also help them get to their goals so that you talked about the team, can necessarily meet the local and then the strategic targets that we've set for the corporation.
I love that. But them making asks of you, right? Say, hey, you didn't move this barrier, but they were clear on what it was, right? And so y'all hear that, the relationship and how dynamic it is, just even with those weekly one-on-ones or those monthly, whenever you have that, you're in control of those meetings, right? You come with the metrics, you come with, here's where we're at, because guess what? Your boss is saying, you do it for me. That's why I have
and speaking of one-on-ones, make sure you keep the conversation balanced. A lot of people come in with their one-on-ones with a whole list of things that they're focused on and what they're working on. Then I'm asking them, John, how are you doing? How's the family? And they go to number 4. And I say, well, what did you do this weekend? Number 5. Talk to me. I'm trying to get to know you. That's more than this, what you're doing. You're hired, you're doing a great job. Everybody's doing a great job. But who are you and how are you doing? Have the conversation. Don't be afraid to have a 50-50 conversation. Little work, little Monday morning football or whatever.
Because that's how you build that trust, right? At the end of the day, that's really what you're trying to do. You're trying to get whoever manages you to trust you to the fullest, right? So every opportunity you have, both from a competency standpoint, but just as a human standpoint, you're trying to build this trust, because really what you're trying to do is build equity, right? I think Stephen Williams said it yesterday. I hate to bite somebody else's bars, but he was like, everybody's going to get in an accident at work, right? The question is, have you done enough to make sure that you can survive? that accident, right? Have you built enough equity? Have you built enough trust? Does your manager believe in you so that when you do have that misstep, it's like, that's all right, it's all right. We're gonna work together, we're gonna get it worked out. Not the opposite, right? So use that time to build that trust so that you can get the benefit of the doubt every day, and particularly in your reviews.
The last thing on that point that's valuable, it's about being credible.
All day.
Credibility comes from what I define as do-say ratio. If you say you're going to do something, you make a commitment, you deliver on that commitment. You build credibility, and then you have currency. So when you make that mistake, you can bounce back from it, and you have a brand that says, he always delivers, she always delivers, and as a result of that, then you can get larger assignments because you can lean into risk, you can manage that risk, you are self-aware, and then you have that trust from the leadership.
And you don't want to be afraid to make a mistake. If you're walking around work on pins and needles, I promise you, you're probably not at your best, right? You got to be able to fail quickly too, right? And understanding that, but you can only do that if you've built in that currency.
Right. And depending on where you are in the organization, the higher you move up in the organization, you may get this question. Your boss may say, how do you think I'm doing? What can I do better? Most people can't answer that question. They're afraid to answer that question. Mm-hmm. Be ready to answer that question. Mm.
You know, I love everything that I'm hearing. I love, and I tell my clients, is that we're designed to be in relationship with one another. Everything that we're doing, our work, our teams, our reviews, our families, our friends, it's a relationship. And how are we engaging in those relationships? And like you said, afraid to have those conversations. Think about our personal relationships. Some of our best friends, we've told them the truth, and they've told us the truth when we didn't like it. And guess what? The relationship strengthened and deepened because we were honest with each other. And so that's what all of this is feedback, right? And these conversations to strengthen the relationship. So with that said, let's see, we have a couple mics. Go ahead, talk to me, yep.
Hi.
Now remember, as the moderator, it's a question, right? If you have a statement, make it a tee up and a question. We know how we get. This ain't Sunday morning.
So I'm alone with two microphones. I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to run over there so somebody from that side can answer as well. I'm going to ask you at the end, just in case we don't get to all the questions, the panel will be here. They can answer questions at the end. Let us have a moment to take a class picture with the panel, and then you can ask them whatever you want, okay? Go ahead, sir.
So, Jay Davis, so I think this kind of makes a lot of sense from where the conversation is at, right? Getting honest feedback. I think the brother right here said you get to a certain level, your boss might even ask you for feedback, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. And I think to get honest feedback, the person you're receiving the feedback from, they have to trust you with that feedback, right? So if my boss asks me for some honest feedback, I might not trust how he's going to respond, how she's going to respond to that feedback. So my question is, how do you earn the trust for someone to give you that honest feedback?
So first I would say, build the informal relationships as well as the formal relationships. So if you're only talking to your leader in formal times, then you have an opportunity to lean into informal times. And so when you're in your one-on-ones and when you're talking about, the things that you have on your list, there's also an opportunity to get to know you. At the end of the day, every leader wants to know who you are, not just what you do. And so as I get to know who you are, I also understand what you enjoy. And when we talk about jobs that we enjoy, what you want to do is we want to match that so that you can be the very best you can be. Trust is earned as I get to know you. As I get to know who you are, what makes you tick, how you like to be communicated to. I'm a direct leader. Some people don't like it direct, right? And so I tell you, when you start working in my organization, look, I'm pretty direct. I don't want you to leave and not know where you stand. But I had to learn through the years to build the right relationship. I still have the same empathy. I still work with them if they don't want it as direct. But I got to build the relationship ongoing, and that trust comes, credibility, and then do-say ratio.
If I can just add, everything he just said, and maybe this goes without saying, but from my perspective, the best way to establish and build initial credibility is excellence. Be great at what you do.
Yeah.
Kill your job. I'm not talking about just be good at your job.
Right.
Kill your job.
That's right.
That's step one. That's gonna buy you latitude. That's gonna buy you the ability to maybe lean in and say, hey, you know what, manager, there are some things that I see differently. You're gonna be more respected because he or she's gonna look back at you and say, yeah, you know what he's doing, right? So you wanna, step one is, I know this goes without saying, but it is so important. You gotta crush your job. You wanna build trust? You gotta crush your job.
That's absolutely it. You have to do your job and do it well, and you'll gain that credibility, build the relationships. I was 90 days into AT&T, and I sit down with the CEO and told him, I don't like the way we're doing it. We should do it this way. But I built credibility in 90 days, and he said, okay, that sounds good to me. I wasn't afraid to have that conversation.
And before we go to that question, I want to offer, hey, you won't know how far you can go until you go too far. So if you ask me the question, I might tee it up and say, are you ready for the answer? And I might let you know, hey, I don't want to damage this relationship, and I don't know if we're there yet, but you asked. So, and then again, with our own personal relationships, think about our friends in our lives, those people that mean something to us. They've told us the raw truth, even when we didn't want to hear it. So everything that they said, and then also if somebody asks you the question, answer it. How about that? Yes.
Yeah, I'll keep it real quick. My name is Daniel Kwachi from AT&T. Quick question. So what happens if I do not agree with the feedback? What do I do?
Get up, storm out of the room, go find another job.
Wrong answer.
What he meant to say.
Flip the deck. Don't do that.
I'm done with this.
Right.
No, don't.
Now,
do that.
accept the feedback, take a step back. Hopefully you have a mentor out there, you have sponsors you can sit down and talk to. You can have relatives, people outside the company you can talk to figure out what the next move is for you. It may be wrong feedback, but you have to build that circle around you. Some people call it your own personal board of directors. It can be people within the company. It can be people outside of the company, and it could be friends and relatives. Have that conversation with them. There's a lot of great experts out there. You're at AT&T. We just met at this conference. Call me if you have that issue, and we'll work it out.
You are allowed to respectfully disagree.
That's correct.
Right? But what my challenge to you all is, if you find yourself in that position, do your best to take your emotion out of it. Right? That's where things spiral. Right? Because now you upset, you all in your feelings, you crying, hurting, and you feeling like the world is out to get you, right? But it's hard to have it like an intelligent, real, objective conversation when you allow your emotions to subsume how it is that you're trying to interface. So what I would just say to you is, if you don't agree with your performance review, first of all, be honest with yourself, right? But if you truly don't agree, if you look at that feedback and say, well, that doesn't represent my numbers or what I did, respectfully, objectively, unemotionally disagree. And listen, y'all, one of the things that I didn't say, but I'm just going to say because I have a background as an employment lawyer, is that not only are those performance reviews designed to ensure that they develop you and so you get paid, but those are also the things, when they done with you, that's what they pull out. That's what I used to ask for. You want to fire Wes? Okay, let me see his performance review, please, and see what it is that we said. So you have to pay specific and really attention to the detail there, and if you don't agree, your goal is to try to get that right, and if they don't want to change it, you write a little note to them, hey, I would just like to respectfully disagree with this feedback. Make sure you do that.
But still create options for yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
You may need to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Within the company or outside the company, always create options for yourself.
And it goes back to the network. Keep the network going, because if you disagree, whether it's a skip level that we were talking about earlier, or it's a peer-to-peer network, it might be another organization that you're aligned to. But if you take the emotion out, you won't be in a place where we're talking about the emotion. You'll be in a place where we're objectively talking about you respectfully decline.
Studies have shown by the Society for Human Resources Management that usually people of color, black people, don't get a specific reason, or they'll get specifics in their performance appraisal. And so make sure you're getting specifics on, if you said it didn't meet the target, what specifically, can you give me an example? Same thing like you're doing it when you're saying this is why you should get this rating, right? And I love what Wes said around, when we think about the emotion, we tell ourselves, don't bring our personal life to work, but we do. right? Just like we bring work home all the time. And so anything that's unhealed in you, any of your stuff, trauma, past issues, are going to usually show up in the person projected out who's telling us that you didn't do a good job, right? And so you want to look at all of that. So that's why mental health is important in part of your whole development as well. Yes, sir.
Hey, thank you. Damian Williams, work with Google. I just want to ask, I do inspire to be in a situation where we're becoming an executive into the same situation you are. Could you please talk to us about more of like, when you look at your expectations that you set for your annual reviews or for the next prior year, like not just picking goals to make sure that you're hitting those checks, but actually what are recommendations to hit those stretch goals and things that we do to help us get to that next level and not just maintain the consistency of what our current level is?
Yeah, I think that advancement is really it's really, at least from my experience, it's a two-part equation. Excellence, right? So performance excellence, and then your ability to build relationships so that the people who can actually help you move up know you and want to do that for you, right? So I really think it is two separate components, but it is 1 + 1 does equal 2 many ways. So step one is be great at what you do, but then step two is like you got to if you don't tell your manager or your manager's manager that you want more, that you, like what you just said, you said, I want to be an executive. Everybody who works with you should know that. Everybody you work for should know that. People should know that you have goals and that your goal is not just to stay in your role if that is true. Now, if your goal is to stay in your role, that's fine. But if you're looking to try and advance, there shouldn't be anybody who works with you, who knows your work product, who doesn't also understand what your stretch goals are. Continually communicate that. That's the only way. If you sit there just like they've been talking about and stay quiet and hope somebody gonna be like, but you haven't even expressed that you want more, probably not gonna happen.
Building on that, you also think about how you can help us transform and change, right? So what else are you bringing to the table other than the metric themselves, right? Is it an opportunity that you see something's not working in the department? How can we make the department better, make the organization better? If you're bringing ideas to the table, that ideation helps us transform and move forward. It's equally as important as the KPI that you're working on as well, because in the end of the day, we want people that are thinking, that are pushing, that are leaning in, that are helping us with those stretch goals to ensure that we're better tomorrow than we are today.
And one more thing I'll add, and don't be afraid to make a lateral move. Also, it's not always a promotion. Take a couple of lateral moves, build that foundation, and then you can move up in the company. Very familiar with Google.
Real quick, just a personal story, because I knew I was in the wrong line of work. I actually took a job where I made less money, right? Now, I'm not telling everybody to do that, right? And trust me, my wife was not happy. We just had a baby, but I knew, I was like, I'm in the wrong line of work. I actually have to take a step back so that I can create a new lane and hopefully do what you love and the bread will follow, right? So I know that hurts sometimes and it doesn't feel good, like that lattice move or that move that, man, my title isn't as prestigious. Don't worry about that if you know you're on the right path.
I love that question that he asked because guess what? Just like we do prompt engineering and AI, when you ask high-yielding questions, the universe are going to give you high-yielding responses, right? How do I get to the next level? As an HR professional, remember you asked for it, because usually y'all bust in the office talking about, they working me too much, or here's the path to where you're trying to go, right? You prayed for your plate to be full, and now it's full, right? So I'm going to make this the last,
We can, but let's have one panelist answer so we can get to these
yes,
gentlemen.
thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. Royce Thompson, Fidelity Investments. I work in diversity and inclusion. And so a lot of our work, while it's not directly tied to the money that comes into the organization, it is a driver with the work that we do. I've been doing this work for about 3.5 years. And last year, in my annual review, even though we hit our targets for the work that we had mapped out for the year, I was told that I was not eligible for deferred compensation or the promotional path talk because the work is still very new. And so my ask is, how would you approach that conversation when you're being told you're doing the work, there are results in the work, but the work is still, the road is being paved as we walk it, you're not eligible for that type of conversation yet?
So what I would say to that is, just because you didn't get there the first time doesn't mean that the work isn't necessary or important, right? And so it could be just like deferred comp, that the deferred recognition is there as well. As you build your brand around the organization and the organization finds it to be work that they want in the organization, then you continue to lay that groundwork going forward. But just because you didn't get it the first time, don't stop, right? Continue to have the conversation, continue to see if it's gonna build into the operating plan, and then ultimately it should build into the fabric of the organization and the strategy. Then you'll know you're on the right place, you're on the right path, and then you'll get the compensation for it.
Thank you, you all. Yes.
Awesome, thank you. My question's very similar. My name is Gregory Paul. I'm a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley in the Boston office. And I guess I'll direct it to Wes. One of the key words I heard you say was equity, which I love. Mostly around equity compensation. So I work with individuals at publicly traded companies and help them either hold their stock, sell, or diversify in some type of way. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of equity compensations if you are receiving equity comp? Well, all of you guys work for publicly traded companies. Your stocks are all beating the S&P 500.
Yeah.
AT&T, you have a beautiful 5% dividend yield. Like, it's beautiful.
Listen.
Like, can you talk about the importance of if you're making a move, how can you work in those restricted stock awards?
It is the way you want to get paid, actually.
Absolutely.
Actually, as your career accelerates, you want to go, generally at lower levels, it's, cash, equity, if anything, right? But as you get to the other side of things, what you're hoping is that you get paid in stock and equity like this. The cash compensation is just the cash compensation. But to me, that is the goal, right? To be able to get in and get invested and get those options, because AT&T and DELL and Travelers ain't going nowhere.
All right, final question, yeah. Oh, okay, yes, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Greg Tillman. I work with Merck. I'm associate. Greg Tillman, Merck Pharmaceuticals up in Jersey. I'm the associate director for the site of engineering. I have a question about relationships. I've been with Merck for 5 years, and I've built one of the better organizations within our overall organization, and it's recognized. I have a new leader. She's an AVP. She's not helping me build me up in the organization. But I love what I do. So how do you build a relationship with a leader that doesn't seem capable or understand how to grow people?
In this case, I think maybe you need to manage up. Since you've been in the organization, she's new to the organization.
Well, she's a transfer, so she got promoted to that, but she's not developing us.
Same thing. You've got to manage up and help her get there. It's different ways you can do that. You can bring in some of her peers or people that you know to help you manage up and help her get to where she needs to be, and you can become the organization you were before. Maybe that didn't answer your question.
Yeah.
Say again?
Hey, just really quick. And what do you do in some instances where you are like this me in your organization in a particular sector, right? So you've done the work, you have the credentials, you've done everything, and you're in line for promotion. However, they decide to bring someone in on the outside, and then you have to train this person to get them up to speed. How do you deal with that?
Again, you get up and you storm out. No.
You want it? You really have to over-communicate.
Right.
How you're feeling, what you're experiencing. These are the times that I'm talking about. Have you built the equity and trust and relationships within your organization to be able to explain exactly how you're feeling? Who do you have within your sphere that you can go and say, man, this don't feel good, right? And if you don't have anybody, that's step one. You gotta find those supporters. You gotta find those people that you can trust so that you can have that conversation. And then at that point, hopefully you can get the answers you want and you can make big boy decisions, right? Do I want to stay? Is this the right place? Do I need to go someplace else because I'm employable?
Absolutely. Thank you. Everybody, give the panelists a round of applause.